only Soul Messiah joining me here on the show here tonight for Sports Hip Hop with DJ Mad Max, Light 65, iHeartRadio. He's produced for many of the greats in the industry, going back to his days with Dallas Austin. If you do your research, he's a part of the Rocksteady crew out in New York, the legendary Rocksteady crew. We have the one and only Soul Messiah. Soul Messiah, what's going on, man? How's your night going?
And everything is wonderful. I cannot complain, man. I cannot. How about you?
I'm doing pretty well, man. You know, just the same old, just keeping on with the shows here, promoting as many artists as I can, especially what you're doing. You've been doing great things for hip hop for the longest now, and congratulations on the longevity that you've had in this game. And now that you have the upcoming album, God Complex, releasing this Friday.
Yeah, man. I'm really excited about that, man. Like I said, it's a long time coming. And I'm excited for the people to hear what I had in mind and what we created.
Rock steady.
Word.
Yeah, that's the real hip hop. And I've heard you say things in the past and on other interviews where you feel as though you created what you hate almost because you were down there and helping some of these Atlanta artists get on, and you created what you hate because you love that authentic sound because you were always inspired by what people were doing in New York.
Yeah, man. I mean, we at one time it was just hip hop. It wasn't separated into southern, northern, trap, gangster. It was just hip hop, and it was a balance in all of it. And then a lot of the young brothers that I would help come in and do music, they just kind of got stuck in that loop. You know what I mean? I guess of you're trying to make money, and I get it, but sometimes it's to the detriment of the culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think we're really going to have a resurgence here because we have people such as yourself that are continuing on, and you teaming up with Sa-Roc. I've heard the story already. You're just putting her in the studio because she told you that she could rap, and then you had her right there in the studio, and eventually you were like, nah, she's got it. And you ended up being a main collaborator with her on many of your mixtapes.
In fact, the only collaborator. We
Yeah.
literally Pete Rock CL smoothed it. We Primo and guru'd it. That was the whole thing. You know what I mean? Trying to make sure that there's that marriage of lyrics and music and understanding, one another's styles and movement. So that's kind of what was created.
G-Rap and Polo.
Exactly.
Classic stuff right there. And that's the classic hip hop. What do you see in her that you think she's better than many of the artists in the era today that we have? Because I know you've spoken about it in the past, and you've alluded to the analogy that she's better than most men out here, and you can tell that just by listening to her lyrics. And you even said that when you look back at your old days and going to classes, the girl was always smarter than the boy in your class.
I mean, it's a fact. We have a little bit of a problem on planet Earth. I'm not going to say just in America. And that is, well, a lot of times men believe that because we're physically stronger, sometimes, that we must be mentally stronger. We know that's not true. But one thing I noticed about SaRoc is that she's not corrupted by the things that we might have been growing up corrupted by. So we're not cannabis and whoever he battled, or Cold Crush and who they battled, and Jay Z and Nas. She didn't pick a side. She just loved hip hop. You know what I'm saying? She wasn't stuck into a paradigm of this style of rhyme or this coast. She just loved the culture, and so with that, I told her just concentrate on good music, and she was able to do that. You know what I mean?
No, you could tell that, especially from her last album. I had her on my show a while back when she released Sharecropper's Daughter, and I appreciated everything that she did on that album. And you were behind the production on that.
Yeah, I did all the production except for one with Evidence, and we recorded right here in this studio. Actually, whole
Oh
album.
wow.
Actually she got 13 albums, but that was the 13th, and this studio is the studio she records in.
And I only see the both of you just going up from here. From what you've already guys established.
It's strictly elevation, man. Working on a new album right now. Got a lot of dope surprises coming.
And you have your own hat here for God Complex. Now tell me the meaning behind God Complex, because when we look back at hip hop, Public Enemy and Flavor Flav they've talked about it on their album as well when they said the white man has the God complex. What's the relation towards what you are trying to get through on this album?
So with mines, I'm dealing with God complex. You know what God is, and whatever that may mean to individuals. It's not. I'm not here to say what God is to another man or woman, but I am saying that concept of God, which is all powerful, all knowing, positivity and love, is inside of who we are. It's everything that what we are. Just like we say, God is in everything. God's in everything. And complex is two things, or can be two things. A complex is something that could be a mental state, or it's something that's a physical, embodied temple, a complex, like a building, right? So with me, with God complex, it is the building that the all knowing resides in. And in that building, in that complex, in that body of work is everything that there is on earth. You know what I'm saying? So positivity, negativity, all the balances in life, up, down, soft, hard, you know what I mean? And all knowledge that people seek is in us, but we have to tap into it. So that's why I called it God Complex, to just show. You ever seen that what is it? Is it Da Vinci? What's the image that they send out in space when they put that plaque up there and it has man, arm, leg, arm, head,
Oh
and
man.
it's got everything that is in man. That's what the God Complex is.
Mm. No, that's interesting, especially that you want to dive into that on that album. You know, that just goes to show you when it's not the mainstream, what you hear out here, what you hear on the radio. When you dive into the further the underground, they have more of a message.
Word, yeah, man. We deal with messages. My thing is, I was raised in a what we call a conscious community. You know what I mean? And in that conscious community, we were all given righteous names. Thus, my name. My name isn't. A lot of people say, "So Messiah." It's not a hip hop name. It's our given name. My children's last name is Messiah. Actually, we might be born with one name, but when we get knowledge of self and we come in the community and do what we're supposed to do, we're given righteous names, because a name is everything. It's power in the name. So when you say a person's name and that name is low vibration, you're only gonna give off low vibration in your existence. So I made sure that what I'm dealing with is all high vibration. You know what I mean?
I could definitely tell that just through what you're telling me right now, especially through your music and everything that you've released right here up until this point. The elements of hip hop, because you started out as a b-boy and a break dancer and a DJ. So how do you feel about the elements today not being the showcase anymore in hip hop, and then how you have the younger audiences such as DJ academics calling the hip hop pioneers dusty? I know that's been a major topic recently, but I think it's important for people such as yourself who have come from that real hip hop era and continue to put that on a pedestal. How you feel about that? And
He's a child. When I say that,
yeah,
I don't mean in age. I mean he's a child. So you know how you have children, and a lot of times they just say silly things, and they say it for attention because they feel like nobody's paying attention to them, or they're not where they want to be, or they got low self esteem. So he says things, and I don't even know why we even give it energy. That's why I like the way LL responded, because he didn't even say his name, but he spoke on it because it's important that we do speak on it. But in reality, we shouldn't give it no energy and keep moving and do what we do. Because at the end of the day, what prevails is real hip hop, the culture. Let's keep it real. It is only one aspect that they focus on, that is the rap. Even though we have b-boying, which is dancing, any type of dance, we have graffiti, which is art in any type of art. We have the MCing, which is what's popping, which is dope, and we have DJing. Those four facets are important to the holistic life of hip hop. And the thing is, as long as we can keep those things elevated, which it is, if you go around the world, kids are still breaking. Everybody's rhyming, doing graffiti, DJing, which is like the production. And in reality, it is live. It's alive and well. And the top MCs on the earth, all the top rappers, are actually not the low vibration rappers. I mean, who are our top MCs? It's Kendrick, it's J. Cole, it's Jay Z, it's still Nas. You know what I mean? It's still those MCs actually still saying a little. And they don't say they're not all positive. I ain't saying hip hop has got to be all positive, because it's good to have a balance. But they actually are skilled and they say something. You know what I mean? They leave you with something. So that's why I don't think hip hop is in a bad way, because that's just the mainstream. We're not going to get into what we call a quote unquote underground, or the hip hop that's not being paid attention to. It is a wonderful pantheon, man, of different MCs, and the women are back all the way in. You know what I mean? And just like with males in rap, how we got negative and positive hip hop, we got the same thing with women. You know what I mean? But it is now coming back to more of a balance. I can say that. You know what I mean? But it's always going to be whack and good hip hop, though. You know what I mean?
absolutely. And we've had that since the beginning of time when we go back and we really look into artists from back in the day and then from now. But, the main thing is about keeping the real hip hop and making sure that the dope artists are still alive, which Sa-Roc is definitely one of them out there. And then you look at the Griselda guys and Dave East. So we have our artists out there. It's just as though that the mainstream is going to pay attention to what it's going to pay attention to, especially with the record labels and the payolas and all that stuff. But in your mind, I want you to take me back to where you started to see things falling apart, especially when you said that you have referenced in the past where you created what you hate in a way.
You saying where I saw the change? You saying?
Yeah.
I think it probably changed around late '90s, probably early 2000s is when it switched. Um, and certain artists started to make music that they were told they would get paid a little more to make. I give you an example. Like I said, I come from the other side of the game. Other side of the game meaning I do what people call underground boom bap, good hip hop. But I started, you know, producing a lot of the R&B that we hear. TLC, Boyz II Men, Madonna. I did a lot of
Monica.
Monica. I did a lot of that stuff. And when I was taking hip hop into the offices to try to shop for deals, a lot of the older cats that ran the hip hop departments were, I mean, for lack of, they were old white men. And I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, what do you know about hip hop? It's like I don't know nothing about hip hop, but what I do know is they would say stuff like, uh, you know, the brothers like the bass, the 808, right? Gangster shit, right? That's like, I mean, we got that element in our communities, but that's not the only thing that's in our communities. You know what I mean? And that's what was pushed. And when the artists were being offered these deals, they were being told that, you know, you should do this type of music. You should do that. That's what really sells. You know, and it's not what really sells. It's what they sell. You know what I mean? So my goal was I saw the cats in Atlanta and in the South starting to go in that direction and do what we call trap music, but they never. Okay, I have no problem with people building on. Okay, this is what's going on. This is where I come from. This is how messed up it was in the hood. But then they never give no solutions. Do you understand what I'm saying? You
Mm.
do that, but then you give the solution on the way out to stop the circle of violence, the selling of drugs. But a lot of times the labels don't want to support that. So that's why I was happy to find out. A lot of people understand the internet was the gift and the curse. The gift is you're allowed now to take what you do and put it out and control everything from the beginning to the end. You know what I mean? But a lot of people that were stuck on the labels, they can only do what they're getting paid to do. And then they stuck in these crazy contracts and they end up not knowing how to do anything else. Some of them raise up out of it. You know, like for instance, I helped Jeezy. I worked on Jeezy's first album.
That's
He
right.
was a snowman forever. But if you listen to the evolution of his music, he actually started to change and put messages into his music. So it is possible, but some of them never come out of it or they just stop. You know what I mean? But Jeezy did. You know, he knew, he understands. You know, like a lot of people talk about, you know, a lot of hip hoppers aren't real. I'll tell you this, for better or for worse, Jeezy, it was real. You know what I mean? Where he comes from is real, and he was able to come up out of it. You know what I mean? And I commend that. But I didn't want to do music that pushed that energy. You know what I mean? I wanted to do music that meant something. Thus, I ended up producing for Dead Prez, Chameleonaire, uh, Talib Kweli, and a lot of different artists, you know, and they were saying something. So that's what I wanted to do. So that's what I make sure I do because I control my destiny.
I remember when I had Sa-Roc on my show and we talked about her interests and what her influences were growing up, and she mentioned to me that she liked grunge music, and that was interesting because Nirvana was huge at the time, and it's kind of when you really, it's all anti-establishment when you really listen to Nirvana in the grunge era back then. I recently watched the Woodstock '99 documentary on Netflix. I don't have you had the chance to watch that?
No, I
Right.
didn't get to see it.
Yeah, I know because I know DMX performed there, Ice Cube, and all the heavy metal rock bands during that time. Was it Limp Bizkit? They were huge then. They went on there, and something that they focused on was just how the people who went there destroyed the whole concert. But what they failed to really showcase, in my opinion, was the fact that hip hop and rock came together at that point. I mean, even so bigger than a point than what Aerosmith and Run DMC did back in the day from Walk This Way. But Limp Bizkit and all these bands, Korn, they were really collaborating with hip hop acts, and they failed to show a light on that, as well as the fact that they went through the same struggle. Hip hop and rock have gone through the same struggle, which is why hip hop artists are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And there's some old school rock artists who may not approve of it. Too bad. But they don't get that same airplay because I'll give you the example of Fred Durst saying, "How many of you like In Sync?" And that's who the record labels really push at that time are bands like In Sync.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on just that whole Woodstock '99 thing of what I just told you, and just how that you had two genres really come together there, and they were going through the same thing against the mainstream labels?
Yeah, man, I had a lot of friends that work with them, man. A lot of the cats. So the Executioners, I was on a label, 99, 2000. I was on Loud Records which is where Wu-Tang and
Big
uh,
Pun.
Big Pun and Mob Deep, and I had a group over there named Jadis. And a friend of mine, actually, the A&R who brought me in was one of the executioners. His name is Sean C. He's a producer. He did 100% for Big Pun and a lot of other records. And he's the one that worked with Limp Bizkit. And you saw they got all the cuts and all. They did a lot of hip hop stuff, which
They
was
did.
really dope. So it was a big part of that. And I was at the label when that stuff was being produced. And I even went to a couple of sessions. I didn't get to check out the Woodstock joint, but I did hear the records and saw them being created. And it was a movement that was coming together. But you're right. No one ever talks about how they did not show that how we came together. You know what I mean? To make dope music. And they didn't push it. You know what I mean? But it did happen. But that's all by design too, though. You know what I mean? Nothing just happens. You know what I mean? Especially I was told by one of these old cats that helped raise me was the man or woman that has the most power is the one that owns the music, the writing of the music. You know what I mean? And we was creating something that was coming together, but they just quieted it and they put it they snuffed it down. So you couldn't hear it. You didn't know it existed. It's funny you say that. A lot of people don't even know that even existed. And it did.
Yeah, no, it did. It's unfortunate that it wasn't highlighted. It was the whole how the people who went burned the place down and just tore the place apart. But there was something bigger there, and I would love to see a resurgence of that eventually because I know you have country artists, with Lil Nas X right there with Billy Ray Cyrus, them making tracks together. But I think there's just something about that rock and hip hop coming together during that time was just epic.
Yeah, it was, man. Dude, it was.
Unbelievable. I know Primo worked with Limp Bizkit too. He did some cuts for them, so that's probably one of the people that that has worked with them.
Yeah, man. He was Primo is a legend. Right now, a living legend. You know what I mean? He got his own thing, his own lane. When you hear a Primo beat, you know it's a Primo beat. It's like, oh, what is this? It's always different. You know what I mean? So yeah, that dude did his thing, and he still does. You know what I mean?
He still does, man. Rocksteady crew. I want to get into this for the people who may not know about you linking up with them and coming out to New York.
Yeah, man. When I was younger, man, when I was little, my goal in life was to be in the Rocksteady crew. I'm being a Rocksteady crew, and I'm from the South, so a lot of times, we felt like you're never gonna make it out of here. You know what I mean? I was in Atlanta. Yeah, we're in Atlanta. You're not gonna make it out of here. We was b-boying and doing all types of stuff, but we figured we'd never make it. But one day, late '80s, my brother, my older brother, told me he came home from work and said, "Yo, I met Mr. Wiggles from Rocksteady Crew." I was like, "No, you didn't." He said, "Yeah, I did." And I told him that you would battle him and wreck him. I was like, "Why would you tell him that?" And he said, "This is the number and this is the hotel he at." I was like, "Well, I'm gonna go see him though because it's Mr. Wiggles and this is my chance, right?" And so I went to the hotel. He was in downtown Atlanta, and I went to the hotel and knocked on the door. He answered the door. It was him and Mr. and Quick Step. Mr. Wiggles and Quickstep. And he's like, "Yeah, we met your brother, man. He told me what you do." And he pushed the beds apart, you know what I mean, in the hotel room, turned on the boom box, and we just was rocking, you know what I mean? And after that, they was like, "Yo, you dope. When you come to New York, hit me up, call me, and I'm introduce you to Crazy Legs, and then we can see what we can do to get you in the crew." So I ended up going to New York. I immediately went, probably about a month or two later. And I met Crazy Legs. I had to battle Crazy Legs to get in the crew. Of course, he wrecked me, but he was really impressed, and he was like, "Yo, why don't you come on and rock with us?" So I started practicing and working out with Rocksteady. Ended up in the crew, and then ended up traveling around the world teaching breaking. You know what I mean? We were teaching breaking in different countries and different parts of this country. And it was just dope, man. It was a dream come true. It literally came true. And I got to start my own chapter of Rocksteady right here in Atlanta, too, after I left New York.
Do you feel as though that social media has played a big detriment into where hip hop just where we don't have the elements of that? Do you think these kids could ever get back into the b-boying and breaking?
Yeah, I think they could because in other parts, see, the thing is, we see what mostly happens in America because it's what's popular, it's what's popping. But if you go to other parts of the world, they are breaking. They still breaking. It looks like New York City, 1988, 1985, in Berlin. I go to Berlin like every year and I tour there, right? And they got classes where they teach kids out there, just like we did when we were younger. And in Asia they still doing it. They doing it all over the world. It's just not focused on in America. Though we do have B boys and B girls here, it's not focused on like that because that's not what's making people money right now. But the culture is alive and well.
No, it definitely is, and it's unfortunate that we don't have those classes anymore. But I mean, you have some legendary stories with Dallas Austin and working with him for the acts that you produced for TLC, Boyz II Men, Madonna. I want to get into a Madonna story that you have here because back in the day, she was with Big Daddy Kane, she was with Tupac. You've heard stories about that. So tell me, what Madonna era did you
It was
mainly
like
work with Dallas Austin on?
94, around 94, 95. It was that song. He had, what was the song? It was Secret. My baby's got a secret. Ooh, remember that song? One thing that was dope I remember about Madonna was she was, you think she's a superstar, right?
Hmm.
She was super down to earth and regular, man. And in fact, she recorded, I remember her recording. She didn't even record in the studio. She went to the engineer's house. And in the house, they built they took like some sticks, like some two by fours, and built up like a tent and dropped a sheet over it. And she went under the sheet and recorded, like on some old school, like we do in the house when we don't have a booth. They did that to record her. You know what I mean? That's funny. I saw the same thing, by the way. I'm jumping years, but she did that, which was dope to me, and it made me respect her a lot. But I'm going to jump about 10, 15 years ahead. I happen to be, me and Lil Jon, from Lil Jon, the producer, we grew up together, right?
Hmm.
And I would visit him when he lived in Miami. And the same thing, I remember coming in the house with him one day. I went over to his crib in Miami, and he had twin beds set up, one against the wall and one cat a corner to it. And I remember uh, Kanye was recording that 20-minute workout, and they would do it right in those in between them beds. You know what I mean? Because good thing about hip hop is we make it work. But I'm saying, in hip hop we do what we can to get the end state. That's what I love about being a musician. These cats are geniuses, man, and they put together stuff that's legendary, and you wouldn't even know what really happened behind the scenes. But yeah, I just thought about that. But Madonna's around 94, and she was just really down to earth, man, and they got a lot of respect for hip hop. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. TLC Creep, that's a beat that you were on.
Yeah, me and Dallas did that, and one of my main contributions is the sample that you hear from see a lot of people sampled it. It's the Guess Who's Back, right? You'll hear that. I put the cuts and the sample in there, and it was Public Enemy did it. Slick Rick had it, but it was originally from a reggae artist named Shinehead.
Mm.
Guess who's back? And you hear Chuck D say it, but everybody took it from this one guy, Shinehead. And I remember we did. And funny part is, LaFace Records got sued for that. For
Wow.
the sample I put in, I didn't have to pay for it because the label takes care of that. But yeah, that was a really dope. And I came up with TLC, with the exception of Lisa. Left Eye was from Philadelphia, but the other two were from Atlanta. And we were around the same age, so we for years we always would run in the same circles, and then we ended up working on TLC together. And them sisters are dope. Chili and T-Boz and Left Eye. It's funny. I was closer to Left Eye than most of them, but yeah, it was dope, man. A dope era, man. It was a creative era, you know.
Yeah,
Very,
unfortunately, not so creative anymore. The individuality, as far as when we talk about the mainstream, we're not talking about what you do. And when I talk about the mainstream, the creativity isn't there. There's no individuality anymore. It's all, who does this poppin' artist sound like? Let me get on it, and I'll go and make a career out of it.
yeah, R&B was more interesting than hip hop is now. R&B in the '90s was better than hip hop now, creatively. I'm saying you're right. Everybody had their own thing, and it was dope, man. You know what I'm saying? And we were able to do things. The elements that I put into R&B back in the day, Boyz II Men, all of them it was all hip hop. I put cuts in R&B records, which was unheard of. I worked on a song for these producers, Tim and Bob. Tim and Bob
Mhm.
are the ones that did the thong song. And
Okay, for Cisco.
yep, but they did. We worked on the Boyz II Men, and it was called Vibin, Viben, Vibin. And Vibin had a remix, and the remix had Busta Rhymes, I think Eric Sermon, and maybe Redman. And you can look it up. But it was, and if you listen to the record, we just got cuts and drums. It ain't even hardly no music in it. It's just cuts, drums, and a few little samples, and they're singing, but it's all these MCs going back and forth on a R&B Boyz II Men joint, which is crazy. You know what I mean?
Unbelievable. And that's what you got back then. Now we don't even get those tracks anymore where you have the flavor in your ear remixes and even the blackouts by DMXs.
You don't get no remixes. Think about it.
No, we don't get remixes either.
That's the reason I released on Rhymesayers that remix tape of 27 joints that I like, a couple of classics and some new stuff, and I remixed everything because we gotta get back to creating. You know what I mean?
And the remixes in the 90s were sometimes better than the originals. When we looked at Come and Talk to Me by Jodeci, people think that that remix is better than the original version.
They don't even know the original exists or the scenario remix. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just yeah, it's dope. And but see, that was that like you said, we were being creative. We were challenging ourselves. You know what I mean? But I have a feeling it's all gonna come in circle. Like hey, Chuck D said, life runs in cycles. I ain't no psycho, and it does, and it's gonna come back slowly but surely.
It will. It's gonna get played out. The sound that's out there right now, all this, it's gonna be. But for right now, because you're always tapped into the game. Who's the most important up and coming? Is if there's an artist that you're tapped in with when we talk about hip hop? Because when we look at Atlanta, it's been so overtaken. People have labeled it. This is where the mumble rappers come out. But as far as Atlanta right now, who is an artist that you're looking at that's going to be the next conscious rapper to come out of there?
Other than Sa-Roc,
Mm-hmm.
I like JID. JID is
JID.
dope. Oh man, he is. I don't even know that dude, but I'm gonna work with him one day. I'm sure he's around here somewhere. I probably know his mom because he's like I say, these guys are like my children's age, and I I love what that dude does. You know what I'm saying? And I think he's next. I mean, he's doing his thing, he's winning, but I think him and SaRoc will be able to really make some noise. You know what I'm saying? Coming up, you know what I mean? And he's already making a lot of noise though.
No, it's insane when you look back on the history of Atlanta's hip hop because you look at the hip hop that comes out today with Migos and all these guys, and you look back, well, Atlanta's hip hop, ATLians, that's completely different from what you hear.
Man, that is some of the best music ever created. And I grew up with a lot of those the cats that produced them. The organized noise, we all around the same age and them dudes are amazing. And the stuff they did with Outkast and Goody Mob is just really dope. I got to build with Goody Mob and Outkast when they were younger.
The Dungeon Family.
Yeah, they were recording. In fact, the I'm literally where I reside is right in in the dungeon. The dungeon is right down the street from me. You
Wow.
know what I mean? Legendary, and it's dope because Big Boy owns that house now. He made sure that he kept that property, and it's an Airbnb now.
No.
It's the Dungeon Family Airbnb. You can go, you could stay there, and it's still got the studio in there and all of the graffiti that they did in the basement. It's got everything. It's really dope. So I love that he kept that legacy because they're some of the dopest MCs and producers that we have in hip hop. You know what I mean?
When you started to see hip hop going downhill, what was that light at the end of the tunnel for you to say that no, this culture is alive and well, and we're gonna have that comeback, which is what you referenced before, and Chuck D saying life is all about cycles.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just all about what you tapped into. When you looked at TV and you listened to the radio, you felt like, dang, we're losing it. But then when you go back and you go back to the shows or you go in, the people doing their underground tapes, it was always there. So I never really felt like, oh, we're gonna lose it. You know what I mean? We might not. The people that are doing what we call real hip hop, we might not make the money that the people who are compromising the creativity for, but it will rise again. But it was always there. I never felt that we were going to lose it. I just felt that a lot of people were led astray. You know what I mean? And even they coming back to the center now because they know that there's no longevity in that. How long you going to rap, dumbed down? You can't do it for long.
No, you can't. And when we look at the production side of things, just to get your take on this as well, because you still do a lot of sampling, and the majority of what the producers use today are 808s, and it's the same thing over and over as far as when you're making trap music. Sampling, do you think that it's that the fact that these producers may not be as skilled to sample, or are they afraid to sample because they are going to get charged for it? What do you think it is when we talk about the art of sampling?
Yeah, they're not afraid because they get charged. A lot of people don't even know nothing about it. The reality is, when you put out a record, if you're independent and you sample, ain't nobody gonna hardly stop you because you don't make enough money. You sell enough records for it to even register. You understand what I'm saying? In other words, it won't even pop up. Ain't nobody gonna stop you from putting something out on the internet. As far as the artists that are on the labels, the labels are gonna pay for it. If it's a sample, they still interpolate and make redo things. They might not directly sample. They'll just interpolate, meaning play it the way that the original went. And the labels pay for that anyway. They're not doing it because they're not afraid. They just don't know how to do it. That's an art in itself. What Pete Rock did, what Large Professor did, what Lord Finesse did, what I did back in the early 90s, what Primo does. It's a skill. It's an art. You know what I mean? And it's not something that you can just sit down and do. And it's not just I'm just gonna sample. It's a way to do it. You know what I mean? And I just think we just don't have the knowledge, the knowledge base to do it yet. Somebody got to show them kids how to do it. You know what I'm saying? And I do believe that when they do start doing it, which you listen to, JID actually will take what we call some trap music. He'll take a sample and he marries them together. And it sounds amazing. You know what I mean? And I think that sooner or later it's going to start coming back to the middle again. You know what I mean?
I remember having a conversation with Arsonist of the Heat Makers and him producing for the Dipset and all the members of Diplomats, of course. We had a similar conversation because I talked about a Dave East remix that he did, and he sampled one of Dipset's songs that he produced. And he didn't like how the fact that the artist would just take the song, they wouldn't chop it up. They would just put the song on there and throw the 808s on there. Because that's the difference. There's no chopping and
There's no
changing
chopping,
things.
there's no change, there's no backwards, there's no forwards, there's no moving it around. They just what sample. They just sample. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But like I said, it is an art to it to chop it up and move it. Add some live bass to it, add some guitar to it, put some things with it, and make them drums move, and not just the 808 drum. You know what I mean? It's so many old records that will give you all of the drums. It's just that people don't know how to take those pieces and play it back like an actual drummer would play and do something different. You know what I mean?
Hip hop has a rich history, and you're a part of it in a big way. What do you feel as though was the biggest story, most important story that has been untold that you were a part of as far as hip hop goes?
It would probably be, well, it's a couple of them. It would be in dealing with the music, because I was gonna go into the resurgence of b-boying, which I was a part of in the late '80s, early '90s. But as far as hip hop and R&B, I was like, we give the credit to one of our first, which was Teddy Riley. Like he was
Mm.
one of the first hip hop R&B cats. But then,
Guy.
yeah, exactly. But the stuff that we did early '90s, me and Dallas and a couple other cats, it didn't exist. Cuts on records, you know what I mean? Scratches, hard drums, and samples. That it was a big thing when those worlds came together, and I was blessed to be able to be right there creating during that time, and that was around '91 to about '96. Is when, if you look back at R&B and hip hop in those worlds, I'll give you an example. When we were recording TLC, Fife from Tribe Called Quest is on the album. Puffy was directing videos for Outkast and doing production with TLC. Um, it was so much going on, and those worlds were all you would see pretty much anybody, with hip hop. I remember seeing Diamond D come through the studio a lot back then. It was Diamond
Shout out
D.
to Diamond D
Yeah,
digging in the
man.
crates.
It was so many, and we were all working and creating. You know what I mean? So I just think that time period of which is now what now it's a common thing. Hip hop and R&B is together, but it was created then with some of the cats that I was working with, and I feel like that's legendary to be a part of that.
No, it definitely is. And have you thought about releasing a book on your life story and just everything that you've experienced?
Well, I am working on a doc, man. Working on putting that together, and we probably will come along with a book. I just haven't. I gotta sit down and do it. But we are recording a short documentary, and then probably later come in with the because you gotta you have to write down your story. I think everybody. I don't care if you did what you think is legendary or not. Everybody should write down their story. You know what I mean? And now we got the ethers, the internet, and I think everybody should be able to. You write it physically, you get the books printed, but you also put it there because that's forever. You know what I mean?
No, you're absolutely right. God Complex is out this Friday. So Messiah, is there anything else you want to let the audience know that we didn't cover here tonight? We went in deep.
Indeed, man. Well, I mean, make sure y'all on the 30th, Friday, this Friday coming up, and beyond. Pick up that God Complex. It features a lot of dope MCs, man. It's some legendary stuff going on that album, production wise and lyrically, and the concepts. You know what I mean? And just, keep an eye out for that real hip hop. And I always say, people always say it's not no good hip hop. You got to go dig. You got to go looking for it because they're not going to give it to you. So you got to look up stuff. That's why I love the science of hashtags. You look up the hashtag, real hip hop, real lyrics, beats, production, and you'll end up running into some substance in music. You know what I mean? And that's all I got to say.
The young kids have to learn how to dig in the crates. They haven't learned that yet.
Word, digging the digital crates these days.
The digital crate. Exactly. So Messiah, let them know where they can follow you on Instagram, Twitter, all your digital platforms there.
All digital platforms. I'm at Soul Messiah. That's SOLMESSIAH, not SOUL. SOL Messiah, and that's on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and soulmessiah.net. You can find me online, and all streaming platforms. Soul Messiah, and you're usually gonna run into me and or SaRoc because we got a lot of stuff together.
No, you do. A dynamic duo, just like you said before, similar to Gangstar, Cool as You Rap, and Polo.
This is Supreme Team. That's what we own.
Yeah, you already know. So, Messiah, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Anytime you want to stop by, you're always welcome.
Indeed, man. Thank you for having me, brother.
Of course, man. Enjoy the rest of your night. Take care. Stay safe. I'm looking forward to God Complex.
Peace, man. Thank you.
Peace out.